So, welcome to the Biz Tech Show with the Hova Fisher. And today we are welcoming Greg Nudelman. And Greg is really the perfect guest on our show because as AI is moving so fast and teams are really running to build things, but despite all the planning and despite all the new tools and talent, most AI products don't actually make it the impact that the teams expect. And you're famous for coding that 85% of products actually fail, and not because of technology or the team, but because of, you'll tell us soon, because of what we're looking forward to hearing. And today I'm really excited to be joined by you, Greg, and we're going to talk about what a strong AI product process really looks like, how UX fits into all of this, and what leaders should think about when building AI-powered products. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here, and this is my favorite topic. So, yeah, I'm absolutely happy to answer any and all questions that I can. We're all still learning. Yeah. So please go ahead.
What were you saying?
Yeah, I was going to say we're all still learning at a very rapid clip. I've been in AI for 16 years and delivered 34 products, and even so, I find myself every single day there's something new that I haven't seen before, some new tool or technique or new way to interact with this technology. This is growing faster than anything we've ever seen. There's tons of opportunities, but also, as you mentioned, tons of ways to screw it up. So if I can help get teams back on track through our work here together, I'd be more than happy to. I consider it a good day.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's a big pain point, what you mentioned, that there are new releases every day, new tools, new techniques. How do you stay on top of all of that?
Well, I actually ask AI, and in many ways, it's by leveraging AI to work with AI. So for example, I just attended CES and I had a class that I was teaching there on advanced prompting for business leaders. Oh. And it was a great class, great attendance, but there's 148,000 people that were at this conference. There were probably 7 or 8 locations, each one with its own full expo floor, and just mind-blowing number of gadgets and things that I haven't seen before. 50 plus lawnmowers and 100 plus mops and cleaners and robot that does your laundry, etc. So what do? I go to AI and say, give me stuff that's relevant to me, because through my RAG files, it knows who I am, it knows my interests, and it knows what's relevant to me and what I'm trying to do with it, which is I'm writing a blog or whatever it is. I have multiple newsletters and a blog, and so that's my angle, and it knows I'm speaking there, so now it knows kind of a little bit more about me, and thus it's able to constrain the results to only the stuff I actually need. So I don't need robotic lawnmowers, even though it is the sheer number of them was very, very impressive, and they look amazing. I'll tell you more if you're interested, but there it is. So use AI to help you work with AI. That's kind of my first tip of the day.
So what do? You prompt, share your prompt with us, and what do you get with that?
Sure. So the way that I like to do it is a little more persistent. So first I do is I build a RAG file, or it's not a rag you wipe your kitchen messes with, but it's retrieval augmented generation.
Can I just pause you for a second?
Yeah.
You're working within your own LLM or within something open?
Yes, good question. So I usually work with Claude, ChatGPT, and Perplexity. I find using multiple LLMs is very helpful. Sometimes it gets you out of that hallucination loop that
Yeah.
sometimes it just gets into. Right. And the other way to reduce the hallucination, to reduce the overload, is literally to tell it what it is you're looking for. So because I work with it a lot, I've created a set of files. So these are RAG files, retrieval augmented generation, that tell it my interests, that tell it what I'm actually into, if you will. And I give it some examples of my blog posts and my newsletter posts. And this is the kind of stuff that I care about: the 85% failure rate, my snowball sprint framework, the thin slicing of data, the delivery to meet ROI, to have a beta in 6 weeks, to have a working AI driven application in 2 weeks, to escape POC purgatory, and then establish a brand new workflow that integrates a bunch of folks together. So I put that in there. I put that into a document, and then I load up this document. I say, use this RAG file and do some deep research and tell me what sort of stuff happened at CES while I was there that is relevant to me. And actually, I did that a couple of days ago, and what came back with is even fewer than 15% seems to be succeeding. There is a huge tension between CEO and CFO. CEO wants to innovate. CFO says, wow, this is like, it's going to cost a lot of money. And folks like McKinsey, folks from McKinsey are reporting a huge growth in customer facing stuff that really deals with use cases, and much less growth on their back end and delivery, and so on and so forth. Like, we can get into it, but the point is, with the overwhelm of information, you have to kind of be very selective, and you have to tell it what you want and provide the context and the way you want to see these things, and then it becomes an interactive conversation. If something I see that's interesting, I can dig into it more. It will do a bit more research for me, etc.
Wow. What I noticed is that you're very specific. You didn't just say what's new, but you said what was introduced at MCP. But also, I'm curious because you don't count on the context and memory of the AI tools. You refresh it each time.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that. So anyone who uses ChatGPT or Claude or for a long time, it knows that sometimes it acts like a drunken intern. That's my favorite. So the world's smartest, slightly inebriated intern is the way that I would say it. So all the same management rules apply that you normally would with folks you manage, but in this specific context, you need to mention all these things. You need to say, hey, this is who I am. This is who I want you to be. This is what the questions that I care about. This is the context for the job. This is the goal for the job. This is the way that I want you to report my findings. So you have to remind it. So there's no guarantee that it's going to remember from one conversation to the next. It should,
Right.
but it's not there yet. Partly because
It gets like stuck on a random piece of information.
oh yes, yeah, that
And
anchoring is very, very common. Yeah, which is where you want to either switch models. Sometimes you can switch models within Claude. For example, you go from Opus to Sonnet, or within ChatGPT, you might go to a different model. Or much more for me now is just to switch the tools. So you take the output that you liked from tool number one, and you stick in tool number two and say, look, first you judge it, say, judge this. This is what I care about, for your judgment. This is my RAG file, or this is the context, literally, for this task. Judge how far we've come, and then tell me what you think we should do next, and create a nice prompt for it. So then I review the prompt, I review the plan, because that's the whole point for asking for a plan, right? Like, you want to make sure you review it. That's another mistake
Right.
that people do, is they ask for a plan. They say, Greg said ask for a plan, and they ask for a plan, and then they never read the plan. And then it's like, well, it's executed per plan, but the plan was wrong because you didn't read it, right? So read the plan. If you ask it for a prompt, if you ask it for a plan, make sure you read it, validate it, make sure it's actually hitting everything you want. The other interesting trick you can do, or trick rather, it's a technique, is you can say, ask me any questions to execute this in the best possible way. You can say also things like, what am I missing? What are some of the things I should watch out for? What am I not asking that I should be asking?
I love
That
those
kind of
questions.
stuff. So these are very, very useful questions. I routinely go through this in my day. I pretty much do all the tasks with the help of AI. My book, for example, this is the last book out of 6 that I did. This is the last book that I'm ever going to write by hand. All the other
Mm.
future books, hopefully plural, if I live that long, are going to be, you never know, right? Is all going to be with the help of an LLM, because I think it's such a multiplier, and it can really sharpen your delivery. It can sharpen your thoughts. Yeah, there's a lot of AI driven drivel, for lack of a better word. It's
Yeah.
it's rife on platforms like LinkedIn, but if you use it in a smart way, it really sharpens your circumlocution. It says, hey, you should really introduce another use case here. This is too narrow. This is too broad. Give us an example, etc. So it knows the kind of stuff that I like to do because of these rack files that I upload, of the stuff that actually, like I had a viral post on LinkedIn that generated 700,000 views, 1,200 plus comments. So
Wow.
you can bet that I'm using that as part of my rack file. Like,
As part of your, yeah.
of course, yeah. Make sure it's like that. Now, am I going to expect every single thing to go viral? Absolutely not. That was a special case, but you can pick the stuff that worked for whatever reason with your audience that really resonated, and that's the stuff you want to continuously reprompt with. Say, hey, remember that post? That's what I want you to write. That's the style I want you to use. And that style was much more punchy, I would say, than I normally would do. I mean, I grew up on sci-fi novels and the Robots and Lasers and Stanislav Lem and Ray Bradbury and Asimov and so on. And they tended to be a lot more flowery, descriptive, um, facsimile, right? Metaphors, uh, uh, really interesting, funny little tidbits. And that's normally how I write, but that's not what people want to necessarily spend time
Style
reading.
changed.
Styles
Yeah. Style.
change, yeah. So audience is always right. That's what resonates. That's what I'm going to be writing. So
Wow.
yeah,
So I
very,
want to
very
touch,
different.
I love how you shared the way you use it, because I learned a lot of new tidbits as you went along. You mentioned, and I want to go back to it because I know this is a big thing you speak about, that 85% of AI products fail, and you're saying now it might even be higher. So
Yeah.
how would you describe that a product failed or succeeded, and why do you think that so many failed?
So yeah, let's define what it means. I define it as there's no ROI. There's at the end of your product. You release the product either as a beta or GA, and you get no adoption, or people try it once and they don't use it again, which is very, very common. Or there's just no return on investment. So you've invested $2, $5, $3 million and 6 to 9 months of your precious time, and now nobody actually wants to use it. And now you're stuck in the situation where you have to explain to the board why you did that and how come that's not actually working. Uh, uh, yeah, like I talked to a lot of clients, and a client I talked to a few days ago basically tried 3 different dev teams. They were at it for 9 months plus, and there's still no working product. So that's another way that I would say it's a failure, right? So you never actually released anything. You're still scaling up your infrastructure, and you're still having architecture debates rather than collecting revenue from happy customers that are can't wait to recommend your product to your friends.
Okay, so no ROI, no return on your investment. You didn't reach your business goals, or it didn't even go out to market. You
Yes.
mentioned very short timelines, though. Like 9 months is not too quick to collect data and have beta users, but for a product to be profitable in 9 months, you think that's what you expect?
9 months is way too long these days. You gotta like I can usually get a simple AI driven feature to beta in 4 to 6 weeks. So
Wow. Describe
that's
that to me. Describe me how you do that.
right. So the way that it would work, it's 1 week of framing the problem, and I go through my snowball sprint framework. Specifically, there are 3 framing exercises, which is the storyboard, the digital twin, and the value matrix, and they evaluate 3 key aspects of the problem, which is the use case alignment with your customers, availability of data to accomplish what you want, and then various handoffs between different agents that are happening. And then last but not least is, do you have an ROI for this use case given your model and your data? And also, what is the cost and the risk of it actually hallucinating or getting it wrong, which it will, because these are probabilistic systems. They're non-deterministic. You don't know you're going to get that kind of result 100% of the time. So if and when it's going to guess wrong, what is the cost of that? What is the impact? If you have a self-driving car and it hits a light pole or hits a child, right? What is the cost and impact of that? So that is critical, because more and more of these things are now in the world, and they are interacting in a physical realm, or they are in a digital realm, and they're in charge of security and access. And so you really want to make sure that your risk and reward is correctly aligned. And most people don't even ask that question, and that is literally how we differentiate our methodology with Snowball Sprint. So
Okay, so
once you
wait,
got that,
can we just
yeah,
backtrack for a second, make sure I didn't miss any detail? So week 1 is you're defining the product, the value we said.
yeah, these
Use a
are
different.
yeah this entire framing exercise, I would say it takes about a week.
Takes
It
about a
really
week. But
doesn't
for that, you have to be
need a
super
lot of
clear.
time.
For that, you have to be
Yes.
really super clear already, because you're not saying, oh, we want to build a million things. It's like you really have to narrow down. This is the one thing we're focusing on now. This week, we're focusing on this.
Yeah, I'm really like you mentioned that, because most CEOs or business leaders, they have a portfolio of things they want to do with AI,
100
and
things.
they are often lost in, like, what is going to give me the highest ROI, what is the most likely to succeed, what is what do we have the data for, what do the customers want, right? There's like, so all this intersection of all these different things, and it's often very difficult to get it right, which is where these exercises help you clarify that. So as part of that 1 week, you take your 2, 3, 4 top initiatives that you are planning through this process, and it becomes very, very clear which one is the highest ROI, which one is more likely to succeed in the short term, and where you may need to take a step back and maybe land a smaller product and then expand, because you don't actually have the data to execute in a larger vision yet. But once you land, you can then start collecting the data, it becomes a learning system, and then you expand. And a year from now, you actually have the data to execute on a larger thing. So as part of that first week, you would take your top 1 to 4 initiatives through this process, and then it becomes very, very clear what you need to be focusing on. So that's week 1.
So you're also narrowing down the ideas and focusing on one. And then week 2, you're collecting the data, the risks, the hallucination versus success balance, all those things that you mentioned.
So that's all the framing is 1 week. So it's really
All
quite
that in 1 week.
straightforward.
Wow.
All that in 1
Okay.
week. Yeah, it's part of my book. I'm actually writing the number 7 right now with AI, because that's going to be more specifically focused on Snowball Sprint. It's very similar to Jake Knapp's Sprint book. So this is actually it's based on expanding this book, which is solve big problems and test new ideas in just 5 days. So this is a little bit longer because it's actually AI, and you can't really test it with a sketch the way that I described in my $1 prototype, and they described in their sprint book. Because with AI, you actually need to build the thing to really test the thing. That's at least that's what I'm finding. But the speed of it is really similar. That's what I'm trying to emphasize, right? So in 1 week, you should be able to do all these 3 key exercises: the storyboard, the digital twin, and the value matrix for all your 4 initiatives, just to make it really clear. You don't need a week for each one. You just need a week to get all of them done. Yes. Yeah. It's not that super complicated. It just takes a few hours. What is complicated is getting everyone in the room who needs to be aligned. And that is what takes a whole week, honestly. But if you know what you're doing, you just need So as part of the engagement, I frequently set up a 3-day workshop where we get everyone in the room, the executives, the head engineers, and we really get down into the nitty gritty and try to understand what
you actually go down on site.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's the only way to really run it. So you gotta look people in the eye and say, that may not work. That's not something people want to hear, unless you're kind of facing them. Yeah. So
I know the book is much more in detail, and everyone could find the book and tell us if it's weird. But what's the next step? Like, we'll go briefly through the process.
Sure. So the next step is you build out a very quick paper prototype of how this flow will work. So by the time you're here, you are kind of already know what the different handoffs are between agents, what is the data that's moving, and what is the question that AI is answering. Now, a lot of these products, there's not a lot of UI involved, so you don't need a lot of UI work. But I find it really does help to anchor it. Say we see this screen, this is what happens, and then we see that screen, or an agent goes out and does all this, and we see the screen after this. So it's 3 or 4 screens. And by then you narrowed it down to 1 or 2 initiatives that you actually want to build, ideally just one, and then you build that flow, and then everyone's on the same page. Yeah, based on our digital twin, this seems like the right UI. And then you just build it. You build a very ugly version, and that actually works. And the key is to build a real AI application with a thin slice of your data. That means you don't pick all the data, you just pick one specific, very narrow use case. You isolate that data, and you use that in your RAG files to build an actual application. Now, this can be really ugly. It can be as simple as, here's a RAG file, here's a standard LLM like Claude Sonnet or Claude Opus, and I upload this RAG, and now it becomes whatever thing that you're actually hoping to deliver. And then you put that in front of customers, and you say, okay, now this is what it's going to do. Try it. And then they actually try it. And then very rapidly, between the customers, we used to call it rapid iterative testing and evaluation. But was based on wireframes. This is actually based on real product. But with vibe coding, you can code this faster than you can make wireframes, honestly. And any change that you've gotten from customer number 1, by the time you get customer number 2, you already have that change implemented. If, for example, they said, oh my gosh, like this output is great, but it's like a wall of text, I cannot read this. You can oftentimes change the output right there on the call. You can say, okay, let me try this, reprompt it, make sure it's smaller, tighter, maybe different rubrics, put emoji in there or not. All depends on what you're trying to do, right? And then you regenerate the output and you say, is that better? Or do you want a summary? And then sometimes they'll get engaged, and they'll give you very real guidance. And this is akin to maybe co-design or participatory design that we used to do, but this is actually in code. It's actually working with the real question that they asked about their real system, and it's actually giving them real output from real AI. So it's a lot easier than it sounds. It's actually faster to do than it is to describe. But that's the new process. And then when you got that validated, you can then build out a very ugly little flow and maybe have a um, little browser plugin that works with your site that you authorize that then specifically works with the data that's on the page already, and on the back end goes to the AI, and then you have your rag file that goes along with the user requests, and it really gives you a flavor of what the whole thing looks like. And then you can simulate a lot of the agent responses. That's what I find to be the easiest in the research phase. And you don't need to build the agents until you actually know what it's doing. So you simulate a lot of agent response stuff. Now I'm giving all my secrets away here, but that's why we're talking, right? So
it
a
sounds
browser
very
plugin,
simple.
simulated
It's not.
agents, you vibe code the whole thing, and then you roll it like a snowball. So the first idea is very, very small, just a snowball, and then you roll it around. You add a little bit of UI, you add a little agent, you add an MCP call, you add to your rag, you add a little more use case or a little more data, and then you kind of scale it to a larger and larger application. That way, it's not a POC. It's not something you need to throw away at the end of your research and then rebuild from scratch. It is something you just then scale and harden and add visual design to, and then ship.
Even
That
though
is
it's vibe
why.
coded.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how do you build on top of the vibe code with manual code, with more vibe coding, something
Absolutely.
else?
If you kind of, well, if you've done this enough, what you find out is vibe coding is just coding. It's just a little bit faster. You still need to refactor. You still need to understand what is happening.
Right.
If you just give it a huge prompt, build me an app that's, I don't know, sends emails, for example. Like, it will do that. It may not work out of the gate if you're unlucky, or say, build me a video game that's like Frogger or something like that. It will probably do a decent job and may have to try a few times. The code will be unreadable. Let me
So
be
the
let me be
refactor
honest.
would be like another iteration of the snowball. Interesting.
Correct.
What
Yes.
stood out to me is that use a thin slice of data, because I know that's
Yes.
often a place where we fail. I could say I've done that myself already once, but I learned. And we still use thin, but not thin enough, because that's a big challenge, right? The data that companies have, it's not clean enough for AI. So how do you handle
Absolutely.
that?
Yeah. Well, you have to identify a slice of data. Ideally, it's between 5 and 50 files, that 5 to 50 use cases, whatever it is that they are, such that you don't need to build a vector database out of it. If you do have to build a vector, that's fine. I mean, that's a given. But anything under 20, you can just upload to Claude directly, which is super helpful. So if you have a use case that has less than 20 individual little questions or individual little files or documents or whatever it is that you're doing, that is ideal, because it will accept that as part of the context window, if they're, of course, reasonable size. All that is given, right? There's only so many tokens, but that allows you to move so fast, because you basically are able to validate it with customers that understand that thin slice, and that can only answer this question. Let me give an example. So I was working for a client on their sim system. They have over 1,000 rules in their sim system, and they said, yeah, we want everything to work. And I said, well, can we just do a little bit less the first iteration, just to prove out that it's working for your customers, that your use case is correct? How about we just take CloudTrail? CloudTrail has 50 rules in it, and that's all we took. I did have to make some vector databases, but these are 1 or 2 megabytes, so very, very, very quick, very small things. And then, incidentally, it allowed me to test that as well. But 50 rules is so much easier to do than 1,000. I can manually inspect 50 rules as they're made to make sure there's no hallucinations in them. I can actually test the outcome of uploading 50 rag files one at a time. Takes about an afternoon. Not a huge deal because you partner with the LLM to make the RAG files. So the output is again fairly straightforward. You test it right there, and then you put testing as part of, you put your test cases as part of your RAG, which is another really neat trick. So it knows what you're asking. So you don't even need to go to Arise. You can just test it by hand. You don't need to go to Phoenix Arise. But of course, if you had 1,000 rules, you have to. There's no way to do those by hand. But with just 50 rules, we were able to prove out the use case. But we told customers when we were testing, you can only ask about rules about CloudTrail. You can only ask about CloudTrail. It will not handle anything else. So they say, great, I know about CloudTrail. We got CloudTrail in our stack. Fantastic. Let me ask it this. Let me ask it that. Oh my God, it's working. When can I have this? This is awesome. And then you got something. Because if there's like a lukewarm response, it's cool, but maybe not for us, but the guy down the street could use it, you didn't quite hit it. But if they're like, how much does it cost? Here's my money. Give me this product now. That's the kind of stuff you want to hear. And that's when
Right.
you're on the right track. And that's why you do the thing, right? Because there's no way to prove out that is what happens unless you actually build it. That's the key that I think a lot of teams get wrong. They get into these long debates about the names of the button and whether it should be a pop-up or a side panel, whether you can resize a side panel, whether it's a modal on top of a side panel. And you're like, who cares? It doesn't matter. What matters is the output. Is it getting it right? Is it actually is it doing what the customer wants to do? Is it doing that magical transformation that's 10x ROI, or is it doing something nobody wants to do and it looks pretty? Like, do you want to be in charge of designing decorations on top of the building, the gargoyles, rain spouts, or do you want to design the building itself and how the elevators move and so on? And majority of the orgs that I am seeing right now is they're still focused on gargoyle rain spots. Meanwhile, their data AI flow is emptying into the elevator shaft. And so
Right.
that's what you got to focus on first. Is it actually working? Is the thing working with real data? And then you build your gargoyles on top. That's at the end.
Wow. So that's an interesting thing that you touched on, and that is like that everyone has their traditional way of thinking, how we've thought till now, right? We're so used to A/B testing. Is a red button going to convert better, or will blue button convert better, and what will get us more sales, and what will all these different things, and we put so much emphasis on it, and this micro copy and that micro copy, and you're saying throw all that out the window. It's not important. And I see that also with developers. I don't know, it sounds like maybe you work as a one-man team. I don't know if you work with developers, but often it's hard for people to change the way we think, as well as org leaders. They're used to planning features in a certain way and like giving me like a 6-month queue. And really you were saying, no, we're working week by week. We don't know what we're working on in 3 weeks. So also, how do we change our mindset? And the mindset of
That's
our
the
team?
toughest. That's literally the $1 trillion question. I think that was one of the things I heard at CES as well. There was Michael Chris Akis, something like that. And I'm butchering his last name, but he's the presidential science advisor. And one of the things he started talking about the infrastructure investments and all of that kind of amazing stuff that we're building here to enable AI. But at the end, what he came back to is like, we have invested hundreds of billions of dollars. We are focused on streamlining regulation. All we want you guys to do now is take this amazing infrastructure and make something that actually produces revenue with this. So now is the
Right.
time to really do that. So you have all these amazing tools, but here's the thing, right? Like, and you might know this expression, thirsty fish. So a lot of companies out there are thirsty fish. They have the data. They understand customer pain points. They have collected years of data, and they have access to these incredible AI tools that are maybe 2, 3, maybe 20 cents per call, depending on what you're sending, right? That's not a lot of money. And the experience they could create for their customer is incredible. And some of them are taking advantage of it, but a lot of them are just waiting. They're just not sure, but they're swimming in information and opportunity, and they're thirsty fish. They're blocked from trying. They block themselves from taking a drink. And that is, I think, the tragedy of today's business is folks just are so terrified that they're unable to do it. And I think what happens is it's actually happening at the middle executive layer. It's a middle management problem. It's the fear that they will be replaced with AI, which is actually often justified because a lot of stuff that people do is just kind of like pushing paper or regurgitating stuff that AI can actually do a lot faster and easier and more reliably with a bit of work. And yeah, like I speak all over the world. Let me give you an example. I I used to work with a lot of UXers. I've switched about 2 years ago to just really focus on product leaders and CEOs, VPs, and so on. But a lot of UXers would tell me, I don't even pick up the mouse unless I get full requirements from my product manager. This is what they would proudly tell me. And I go, look, man, like, I understand that's how you used to work, but guess what? Things are changing. That's not gonna be the paycheck anymore.
Yeah.
Right. Because if somebody can formulate what you're describing, then I can actually produce, the LLM can actually produce the code, not design, but the actually entirely running system with that description based on your in-house styles and your colors and your templates and so on. It doesn't need you to make wireframes. It can just actually write the whole application out, and it can do it in minutes. And it can give you 5 different versions of that you can then test with customers. What it needs you to do is get off your butt and take initiative and define where AI can make impact. Really focus on what this technology can do for your customers to produce business outcomes, return on investment. That is what you need to be focused on. If you're sitting on your hands waiting for your PM to give you requirements, it's game over.
So you think
you basically don't have a job.
Product or hands in hands? Where does it come then in the process?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Where does UX then come in your process? Before product management, with product management?
That's a great question. I think we're undergoing I'm going to get a little philosophical here. I'm going to weigh in poetic. Little joke. All right. For a minute. So I think we're entering the space where we're not going to have job titles the way we used to, and it's not going to be in silos. And where a product manager can be both a UX person and vibe code a real application, where a developer can go build something without product management description that they think is going to really resonate with customers, go talk to customers, and then prove it out and iterate themselves. We're entering the age where UX is basically a euphemism for talking to customers and having the taste and understanding to see what works, which anyone can really have. So what I'm saying is it's less about individual titles and more about what you can do to make the snowball bigger and to roll the snowball in the right direction.
Based, like this is your task.
Precisely. Yes. Hey, can you vibe code? Great. Doesn't matter what your title is. How about you vibe code this, and here's the data contract. Go make this agent.
And then get on a call with the client and iterate on it with them on the call, like you described before.
Yeah, if you could talk to
it was
clients.
Always like that. Yeah. When UX designer wanted product descriptions for me that described screen by screen, I'm like, but isn't that also your job, like I'm
Yes.
doing the UX for you, which I love to do, but then you're just doing UI. Like
Right.
really the product and the UX were always should have been very tight.
Yes, and in my experience, that's literally what I've been doing. Again, it's a natural transition from UX to a product, and I think vice versa. And we've always just made that very siloed for whatever reason. And this handoff doesn't work anymore. The handoff is where the three in the box was the new thing about, I don't know, 10 years ago. Agile was a new thing 10 years ago, or maybe even
A
20.
little longer.
I'm really dating myself. But the point I'm trying to make here is these are not set in stone. They're not something that is always guaranteed to work. And three in a box was a solution to a particular thing, which is to improve communication and to enable the data, unrestricted data flow about a particular business problem that you're trying to address with your system. Now that is also not working because the handoff is what it evolved to. So three in a box really evolved into this very regimented handoff. For example, PM writes a business case, they write a PRD, the leadership approves it, then they go to UX person and say, I have this idea, we should do this and this and this. What do you think? And then they go, okay, let me go do some research. Then they go do this research, they come back with a bunch of wireframes. PM gives them feedback, some iteration happens, and then the wireframes go to the developers. And the developers just, it's a Death Star, as I like to call it. Nothing comes in, nothing comes out, right? Until 6 months later, you see something and it just blows up all over the galaxy and all over your user screens. They just say, we're working on it. We're working on it. They can't see anything yet. We're running. Yeah. So
That's where I come in usually.
That is junk now. That's bullshit. That's not going to work now. We're done with this.
It never worked.
It never really worked to begin with. Yeah. Now it's really absurd.
So we're all going to be really like product managers. Product managers always wear a lot of hats and did a lot of things. So you really see the whole industry moving towards lots of product managers that have even more control over the product now because they're not dependent on the developers.
It's more about everybody's rolling the snowball together, and you have particular aspects of the problem you're trying to solve. Now, you're trying to wrangle data. For example, I was talking about 50 RAG files. Now, could be a lot for one person to manage. So you say, look, I've made these couple of RAG files. Here's the RAG that I'm using to make these files. Here's some examples. Can you go make the rest of them? You know how to do it. Doesn't matter what your title is. Is it UX? Is it product manager? Is it developer? Probably doesn't matter. And again, vibe coding used to be the big separation, is the code. Oh my God, we don't touch the code, right? We don't talk about Bruno. We don't talk about code. This is little developer stuff. Like that is always been kind of bizarre to me because I've always been I started out as a developer and a DBA, and I did full stack work, worked a lot with Oracle, with biotech applications, where it wasn't so separate. It was more like, we want the application to do X. It doesn't really matter what the thing was. I remember very clearly in my second job out of college, I was actually programming a Fortran robot. That was like very old school, and my mother actually knew Fortran at the time, and there wasn't much. It was really after Fortran days, right? But it was sitting in the corner, dusty. Nobody wanted it. It was unloved. It was one of those unloved robots from the Star Wars or whatever. And so I said, what is this thing? What was it supposed to be? A robot? Never worked. And what I discovered is the reason why it didn't work is it drew the liquid in slowly, and then it released it really slowly. It just did this very, very glacial pace of mixing. So mixing never really worked because you need a little bit of agitation to mix the chemicals in your tube. So wow. I went into the program and it was very well laid out. And I was like, okay. Then I asked my mom a couple of questions, like she was still alive. She passed away since then. But, we're talking a long time ago. Okay. Like I'm not going to name the years, but it's been a while. So That's literally, so in about a day, I got it to work. I got it to actually inject the thing. So it would draw it up like this. So it was going like boom. So it could do like 10 agitations in the time that it used to do one expulsion. So it
Mm,
was actually mixing now. It was actually working. So I got it to work, and in like half a day, I got it to work, and I was blown away. I'm like, this is a working robot. What can I use it for? Oh, great. I can do all these parallel reactions. And the chemistry we were doing was actually quite simple. It was ranolazine chemistry, or it became an adjuvant drug, and filed a bunch of patents for Gilead. And literally within a week, I was making 7 times the number of compounds that everyone else was doing in the lab. And my boss at the time, his name was El Fatih El Zain. Still remember that. He was from Egypt, I believe. And so, you know, here you have basically a Jew working with an Arab, and we
and
got
creating
something
this.
amazing working together. And this thing is, he tells me, where have you been all my life? Because
Wow.
I was like this is the biggest compliment I've ever gotten, and I will never forget it. It really just landed on my heart, and just the warmest possible thing I an employer ever told me, or a manager ever told me, and it was like amazing. And we got all these patents done. We got it like way ahead of time using this robot that was just sitting dusty in the corner,
Wow,
and a
that's
little
awesome.
bit of exploration. So this stuff is now in your hands. You don't need a lot of knowledge. You just need a permission. Give yourself permission to try. This is magical, amazing time to grow, to invent, to create, to make. So if you have that muscle, if you have that, even an iota of that energy in you, this is the time for you to shine. Go and shine.
Wow. Wow. So that's very different than like the whole attitude of being scared of where my job is going. You're saying go explore, try things. There's so many opportunities.
Absolutely. And it's fairly safe. Just don't load customer data, don't load strategic data in a public LLM. If something is running in your own internal setting in Bedrock, that's pretty safe. But again, check with your IT, check with your legal before you load any proprietary information into an LLM, because they will grab it and use it. Some are better than others, but you do want to double check before you do any of that. But for your personal stuff to try things out, absolutely, this is what it's for. And ChatGPT is free. I believe the basic one is free. So it really is up to you to explore and to make this stuff happen. It's, you have all the
Very
tools you
encouraging.
need. Don't be a thirsty fish. Don't be a
Yeah.
thirsty fish. Go try it.
Yeah. Okay. There's a few things I want to go into. Two specifically. One is I know you're not into the roles as much, but I'm curious, where does, let's say, the project management come in the whole snowball process? Who's managing all this, even if you're not calling it project
Yeah,
management?
yeah, that's a great question. You do need somebody to wrangle the team, make sure we're stay on track, and I think that's the project
And
management
communicating with each
role.
other.
Right, right,
So you
exactly.
still
Hey,
see
that's
that.
what we're doing. This, we're not doing that. Somebody needs to be the person where the buck stops. We're gonna use this. We're gonna land this feature, then we'll do this. Basically putting the strategy together. And this is what I help people do, and I help companies adopt this. I train their entire teams on
Tell
this
me more about
entire
that. Tell
process.
us about what you do.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes. So for Snowball Sprint, there's a variety of services that I offer. One of them is training. So it's training your entire team to go this fast, to actually get a beta in 4 to 6 weeks, which sounds astonishing, but that's literally what we do. Like, I just went to UX to Tokyo, did a workshop there with a bunch of product leaders, and they went from an idea to an agentic working application in Python with a rack file in one day. And that's literally what I teach your whole team to do. And the best way to teach it really is to actually take a small project all the way through the flow and talk to customers about it and pivot and actually see the whole thing in action. Because if you just do training, a lot of times it's people say, oh, it's nice, and then it sort of sits on the shelf. This way you actually get to try it and you see it and you see this new way of working, and then you may never go back. And
So if
then
you're a manager today, it's not enough to know the concepts and understand how they work. You need to actually be able to build it
yes,
on your own computer.
absolutely. Yeah, I think, well, I mean, it depends, right? Like a lot of folks are people managers, but if you're down in the trenches of actually doing this, I think the only way to really teach it is be hands-on with the product. That's what I prefer to do. So I prefer to do the full snowball sprint, as I call it, with the clients, and it doesn't cost a lot, and it's not a lot of time, as I said. So very quickly you see something is working. So you will be the proof that, as Eckhart Tolle said, you'll be the proof that this actually works. So that is kind of my bread and butter. But a lot of it also is like deciding what we started with, which is deciding you have a whole portfolio of projects. Which one should I focus on first, second, and third? How do I put together a strategy such that I reach my vision, but maybe land and expand? So land with a smaller slice of something and expand it to a more full-featured. Maybe I don't have the data to do what I want to do, so I help leaders really make those decisions. We go through just the framing aspect of it for all of their initiatives, and then they have their answer. It becomes very, very obvious once we do this what they should focus on. And then a lot of people just follow it up with a full sprint to actually build it. So it's training, it's strategic decision, what to make, and then actually go ahead and make it and deploy it and see the ROI. And then your team is trained as part of the process. So that's the whole package. That's all I know.
Wow, we got to bring you over here to this side of the world.
Awesome. Yeah, let's do it. I love to travel, man. I've been to now 19 countries. Did the teaching in 19 countries. Yeah,
Wow. And not virtual. You never do online.
I always do in person. I love
Always
going. Yes, I love traveling. Even now,
wow.
it's getting harder. It's getting weird. Let me put it that way. It's not harder. It's just more weird. But I love that. Yeah,
Interesting. Wow. I'm a virtual, like always worked virtual. It's so interesting. Nice. We actually got a question from a follower for you,
sure.
and this is what they wanted to know. Let's say, for example, you described the product before. It sounded a lot of it is like in a chatbot style, right? Like a lot of our products today are much less UI based, and you said that as well. It's like you're talking to the SaaS instead of using it. You just have to talk to it. You don't have to. It's much simpler. So with this whole, like, is that gonna replace a traditional B2B product, or is it gonna be an addition? Are we gonna
Great
need
question.
UIs?
Yeah, you absolutely need UI. In fact, I would say only out of the 34 that I've shipped, maybe 3 are chatbots. I would
Oh,
say the
interesting.
rest of them, yeah, the rest of them have a UI that is different than a chatbot. They may have an application where you ask a question, but it's in a different UI. It's almost never this traditional co-pilot that sits on the side and interacts with the page, unless it really is the best solution for it. So to start with that as a conception is probably a mistake at this point, because more and more what I'm hearing from my customers and what they appreciate is I come in and I don't just try to sell them a chatbot, but they say, "Oh my God, tell me it's not another chatbot," because I've seen so many chatbots. Right? That's literally what you hear back from folks, and that is true. There's a fatigue that's happening from this, and a lot of it is due to Microsoft Assistant. I guess that's what it's called now, a Microsoft Assistant. It is. They just threw it at everything, and I think people are just really fatigued by it. And that was okay in the early days, but you really want to understand what is the customer trying to do and trying to get. Like in that example earlier from cybersecurity, they needed they don't need all the chatting. They actually would say, here's the reason. It's an actual form you fill out. This is what we think it is. This is the rule that is misbehaving, but you're actually sitting on the rule page and you say, hey, it's misbehaving in this way. I think this is the reason. Figure out how to solve it. And what comes back is not a lot of chatting and a wall of text, but comes back an actual rule edit. So you actually see the rule that's been edited, and that is in the edit box. And then underneath it, maybe even in the collapse section, is how we did it, was the explanation why we picked this rule and the analysis of why we recommend this change, etc. And
you're
then
still to it. You're not like pressing buttons or anything.
Yeah, but the whole thing is very much integrated into it. So it's less of a chat and more serious work that's integrated into your work. So it's not something that sits on top or sits to the side, but it's fully integrated into the flow. Now, granted, there's usually not a lot of screens that are in there, and the screens themselves are probably less important than they used to be, but there's definitely some part of it. Now, a lot of products depends on your application, of course. But again, I would not start with like, oh, it should be a chatbot. What's in the chatbot kind of a deal, but more start with understanding what is the customer trying to do and what is the best UI for it. Because most of the time it will not be a chatbot, but it will be something that is truly integrated and works with the existing product or provides a brand new functionality to your tool. Does that make sense?
Example? Yeah. Is there like a real life example you could give us?
Yeah. For example, one of the things I shipped for Sumo Logic was this interlocked 4-agent autonomous investigation system. So we tried to make it as a chatbot, and that was very kind of a Farmville. Hey, looks like you're investigating the security alert. Would you like to do an investigation? Click the button. Yes. So that's very Farmville. Okay. Thinking about what you should be doing. How about these 12 steps that you should be running? Do you want us to execute these steps, or do you want to edit the steps? I want to execute the steps. You click the button that runs. It's so tedious. Like people said, yeah, concept, it was all right, but gosh, what I really want is something to get it done by the time I come to the alert. It's already did the work for me, and it already investigated basic things that I would have already tried, and it's given me a verdict based on this, and giving me some new steps that I can click, and it just runs it. And I don't need to think about syntax of the search. I don't need to think about the steps. It already did all this and gave me the verdict. So that was the feedback, and that's what we did. There's very little chatting happening. It does all the stuff.
What does it look like?
It does what it looks like is its true investigation, mirroring the way that they do their investigation. This is what our assumption is. These are the steps that we are doing because of this understanding of the signal. Based on this, it goes back and figures out what entities are involved in this, which is like, what's the IP address, like phishing? What's the phishing email? Who's the phisher, right? What was the phishing IP? What was the virus look like, right? And does all the similarities. It does all the stuff that a typical SIM does. So it does all these things, creates 12 steps, and then executes each step, and then produces a graph or an output or a table or something for each of the steps, analyzes the table, says, I analyze this table. It shows persistent, backdoor access to this IP. It really doesn't look good. And then let me check, for example, did it try to change permissions on AWS? It did. It changed the permissions. It really looks dangerous. I recommend these following actions. Immediately block this IP, and then remediate and talk to the customer to make sure they don't click it, clean his laptop from viruses, re-image the laptop, that kind of stuff, right? Like that is useful. There's no chatting. Like you can still ask it questions after, don't get me wrong, but it did all the stuff already for you, and it put it in the format that made it very, very easy to read. In fact, the original UI, there was no UI. We did it all in Slack because a lot a lot of these folks do their work in Slack. So I just said, I worked with Slack before at Cisco. It's a very nice UI. This will be familiar to them. So it basically does this exact thing, that it mimics almost like a team member in Slack, and follows the same format for investigation. And all the explanations I told you it was very painstaking, but all the explanations ended up being a side conversation, and all the graphs and the tables ended up being in line. So what you see is a small plan, and then you see all of the hard-hitting information. This is the table of IPs. This is the table of permissions. This is the graph of how often they've actually accessed it over the last 7 days. Bam, bam, bam. Here's a verdict on this. And if you want more information, you can drill down into the site convo. But that was the UI. So there's no chatbot. But now chatbot is
just a no UI. It really brings out that there's like a whole layer of UX and all those buttons that we spoke about in the micro copy. It's actually just doing things, and it doesn't live anywhere.
Exactly. So think beyond the chatbot if you can.
Wow.
What does
but also beyond the UI, there is no UI.
Yes, a lot of the stuff is no UI. Like Alexa, for example, I just put a new article out in my newsletter saying how Alexa just changed the voice on me, and they try to gaslight me and say, no, we didn't change the voice. It's still the same voice. It's like female number 2 is the same voice. And I'm like, no, it's not. I can hear it's not the same. Are you kidding me? Why are you trying to convince me it's that my ears are on the backwards? Like, that is so uncool. Like, you're trying to make me trust you.
We still have UX. The user experience, though, is more on the tone and all those like. So tell me a bit about UX.
To look at. Exactly. There's nothing to look at in the traditional way, but there's definitely a user experience with the product. But a lot of it is in this voice interaction that is kind of in the short term, in your short term memory, or it's in the conversation. The conversation is itself the experience. So that would be more like a chatbot, but this one is totally in voice. So there's no UI. It's definitely something to explore. So don't just think like chatbot. It has to be like Microsoft Assistant. It doesn't. In fact, 99% of the stuff is not going to look like that, ideally.
But if we think of like a product, for example, Jira, that a lot of us are familiar with, I can imagine that at some point we're not going to have that whole user interface. We'll just be talking to it.
Well, you still need a dashboard, right? You need like your active tickets and your current
Give me
status,
today's active
right?
tickets.
You can always, like, we've actually tried this. There was I'm consulting with this edutech company in Europe. It's one of their top online universities, and they've tried to do that exact thing. And let me tell you, it didn't really land because the customers didn't know what to do with it. It just became a chatbot. Like, okay, where's my materials?
You have to think on your own. A dashboard gives it to you. When you're talking to it, you need to think. And when you have a dashboard, it's thinking for you, really. That's like the traditional UX was like think for the user.
Yes. So a dashboard is still a very useful thing. Like for example, so literally what it did is replaced the entire UI that they were used to for an online university. So that showed classes and your status and completion. And these are the exams you need to take. It just replaced it with the chatbot. So you supposedly you could chat with it and say, show me my classes, show me how far I'm along. Like, but it's tedious, right? You don't really need it.
In your chatbot, you have like a button that says classes, this, that.
Yes, that's
like recommendations of things you could ask, so you don't have to think.
Without going too far into it, you're on the right track. Yeah, I'm not gonna expose all the work that we're doing, but basically there's some information architecture that you need as part of these. There's a whole chapter in the book on information architecture for AI applications, and I use.
So let's talk about your books for a second. Yeah, give us a quick summary.
Here's the book again, in case you're just joining us, and highly recommend it. It's got all the things we've talked about: the storyboarding, the digital twin, the value matrix. It goes through all of these exercises that are part of my snowball sprint framework, and it's extremely practical, or as practical as I can make it. And none of it was written with AI.
So this
Oh
is
my
not just UX, it's also the management of the project. Wow.
Absolutely.
Wow. So if I only have time to read one book this week, would it be this book or a different
Yes.
one of your books?
Absolutely. Yeah, I would definitely go with this one. I try to make it as short enough to like, if you have a flight from London to San Francisco, you should be mostly finished with all the interesting bits.
Nice. Do you have an audio version?
I do not. This will be an audio version. You and
We
I should
just went
record
through a
that.
lot of it.
Yes,
It's not
exactly.
like a book though. No, I need to go read it. I do a lot of video because I'll do it. I'll listen while I need a break from my screen, like from reading. I'll listen.
Totally
Like
understandable. Well,
exercise.
it comes in good old fashioned paper, although it's a little thin, I have to say. Right, that's my one disappointment. But it's not see through or anything, but it is there. But it's got a lot of graphs, right? It's got a lot of graphs and diagrams. So you're gonna want to see what we got for you there. I'm just looking at something good. Yeah, like here's like opening slides for your storyboards, and it goes through all of the nitty gritty. Here's a digital twin chapter. So by the way, if you reach out to me, I can send you this digital twin chapter, which is a real crowd pleaser. I can send that to you for free. I've been authorized by Wiley to do that. So, just reach out to me on LinkedIn or through Snowball Sprint.
So anyone that's listening to this could reach out to you and get this chapter for free?
Yes, just reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'll happily send that. I also have a bunch of guides. I have a vibe coding guide. I have survival guide for product managers and leaders. The business leader prompting techniques. So those.
And where could people
really,
order
really
your book?
Amazon's great. Wiley.com, but Amazon is ideal.
Easy.
Yeah.
Hey, so tell us, is there anywhere in your life where you specifically do not use it? After you went into how to plan the UI and get everyone else to use it, is there anywhere where you don't use it in your life?
Well, I think I don't use it when in anything romantic. I think that's really tough, because you want to be genuine about it. But I do come up with like ideas for for date nights, or ideas for gifts, or things like that. That's even like my dad is really hard to shop for. So I was at the end of my rope. Finally, I just gave up. I spent a week thinking about it really hard without AI. And then finally I said, okay, what is out there for really recalcitrant 85-year-old guys that, bachelors, what is out there? And it actually suggested some stuff. It knew from my conversations that he had trouble, with his eyes, trouble reading. So it suggested this lit like a magnifying glass type of lamp, where you can, it lights up the page, and he loves physical books too. So, which is hard with
now he could read your
prints.
books.
So it literally, so he can now read his books, but of course he, I probably would not have thought of that myself. Like it really is an amazing tool. If you use it the right way, it really is transformative, and it gives you superpowers. So yeah, other than that, I love to ride my bike. I love to exercise. I don't really use it for that. I have friends who swear by exercise routines and stretching routines created by AI, and they love it. But for me, I don't really do that. I just I use other sources, but those are the two things I would hesitate. But anything work related, it's all good. Let's go.
Wow, wonderful. What's one thing you'd want to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, just don't be afraid to try. Don't be a thirsty fish. And if you need some help, there's help out there for you. I do the training. I'm happy to help you and your company. If you feel like they need a little nudge, just reach out. snowballsprint.com. You get my books, you can get other resources, and I'm happy to help. There's help. There's help for you, even if it seems really daunting at first. You will absolutely love it once you get to know it.
Wow, wonderful. One thing that really stood out for me in our conversation is, don't blush, but how humble you are and accessible you are.
Oh my gosh.
I heard a podcast
Thank you.
of yours a long time ago. I was like, wow, this is a guy I'd love to speak to. And I was shocked when here we are on screen. I would never imagine. So yeah, Greg's usually really accessible, really nice to work with and speak to. So don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a pleasure. Great questions. Awesome. Thank you.
Great day.